Achilles. Legends Untold is based on the myths of Achilles, and uses the well-known legend as its foundation. The fearless hero leads his loyal Myrmidons on a campaign against Troy to bring back Helen, who was abducted by Paris from Menelaus. However, from that moment, the story begins to drift away from the classic myth. Did the developers manage to create something fresh and innovative? Is this game better than Titan Quest or Diablo? Let's find out. During the assault on the city, Achilles gets the chance to face our enemy and the game's first boss, who kills us. And I think many players wondered whether it's actually possible to defeat him and how that would affect the story later on. Kind of like in Far Cry 5, where the game ends if you choose not to arrest Joseph Seed. Well, let me reveal this terrifying secret to you. The story changes. Not at all. Even if the player manages to defeat the boss, Achilles still dies, though you do get a reward for it. Isn't that adorable? And then, just like that, he returns to life. 10 years later. During that time, the world has changed. Dangerous monsters roam across Greece while Menelaus hunts down the Myrmidons, who were once Achilles' most loyal companions. The player must uncover what happened and find their place in this new reality. The story itself is fairly engaging and enjoyable, though it can definitely be called classic and somewhat predictable. It doesn't feature any huge twists that would make the game stand out among other projects. At the same time, the narrative never disappoints. It fits the atmosphere perfectly and doesn't get in the way of enjoying the gameplay. Achilles. Legends. Untold positions itself as an action RPG with Souls-like elements, but the difficulty largely depends on the player's choice. If you enable Adventure Mode, which the developers describe as balanced, the game feels much more like Titan Quest, straightforward, dynamic, and not overly punishing. The player explores large open locations, defeats enemies, and occasionally encounters bosses. But if you choose a harder difficulty, the game turns into a real challenge for hardcore action fans, although sometimes the difficulty feels artificially inflated, making the game more exhausting than truly difficult. By killing enemies, Achilles gains experience and upgrade points that can be used to improve attributes and unlock new abilities. The skill tree is presented as a massive constellation map, filled with countless nodes, which personally reminded me almost one-to-one of Skyrim's progression system. The way the main character opens chests brings back memories of God of War, while resting at portals gives strong Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order vibes. By the way, experience accumulates pretty quickly. Even during the very first main mission, you can earn several dozen upgrade points. When you die, only part of your experience is lost, and you can return to the place of death to recover it. Achilles can use swords, axes, spears, various bombs, and throwable weapons, while also equipping different armor sets and active abilities. The core combat mechanics revolve around two attack types, a fast but weaker attack, and a slower but more powerful one. You can also perform these attacks while sprinting, and depending on whether you choose a heavy or quick strike, the attack animation itself changes as well. Blocking and dodging feel intuitive and familiar. Dodges come in two forms too, either a quick sidestep that keeps you in close range, or a longer rolling leap that creates more distance. In addition to standard attacks, players can use special abilities unlocked throughout the game. But don't forget, all of these actions consume stamina. It's worth mentioning that the game does not reward mindless button mashing. Success depends on learning enemy attack patterns and mastering precise timing. The character progression system allows players to customize Achilles according to their preferred playstyle by choosing between different weapons and abilities. Enemy variety also plays a huge role, as each enemy type has unique combat patterns that force the player to adapt and choose the right strategy for victory. Because of this, the RPG mechanics don't really feel unique. Everything is simple and easy to understand. Players simply pick their favorite weapon, gradually unlock skills, and swap equipment depending on item stats. There's also a moral choice system. After defeating certain enemies, Achilles can either finish them off or spare them. How much this actually impacts the world remains an open question. There are, however, some issues with the combat system. 1. Hitbox problems. Sometimes it's unclear whether your attack actually connects, or if Achilles is just slicing through the air, though you do get used to it fairly quickly. 3. Using healing potions or weapon oils during combat is basically a form of torture. The developers created separate animations for these actions, so even during fights in relatively open spaces, your hero slowly drinks a health potion while enemies close the gap within seconds and immediately remove half of your freshly restored HP. The same issue applies to weapon oils. And trust me, when you're trapped in a tight space fighting a dozen enemies after a couple of failed attempts to heal Achilles, you'll probably need healing yourself. Mentally. Still, the overall combat flow isn't bad at all. The isometric camera creates a feeling of constant action. However, another questionable design choice was the lack of disappearing textures when the character moves behind buildings, rocks, or environmental objects. Instead, only the outline of the hero becomes highlighted. I understand that this may come down to personal preference, but for me, this solution just didn't work. On the other hand, dismemberment effects during combat and with enemy limbs flying everywhere look fantastic, especially on a large screen. I also absolutely loved how the developers handled spear combat. They genuinely made me fall in love with it because it feels incredibly realistic. Achilles doesn't wildly spin the spear around like Donatello from the Ninja Turtles. Instead, he performs precise thrusts that help keep enemies at a distance. I also appreciated the fact that spears are not ideal against large groups of enemies. For that, one-handed or two-handed swords are a much better choice. The game transports players into a stylized world inspired by ancient Greek epics. The environments feel authentic, offering a variety of locations inspired by Greek mythology. Players can explore ancient temples, dense forests, and other picturesque areas while encountering both friendly NPCs and hostile creatures. Interacting with the environment and completing side quests adds depth to the gameplay and strengthens immersion. If you look closely, you can notice simplified animations and somewhat low-detail backgrounds, but the overall presentation remains attractive. The graphics don't aim for photorealism, yet they still look polished and visually pleasing. The soundtrack perfectly complements the atmosphere, and the optimization deserves praise. The game runs smoothly without major lag or technical issues, especially on consoles. Although I do have some complaints about the enemy AI. Sometimes enemies aggressively swarm you from every direction, while other times they seem completely unaware of your presence even when you're standing right next to them. Thankfully, this inconsistency doesn't happen constantly. The developers actively fixed bugs and improved the game during early access, so the final version feels significantly more polished than it did at launch. Achilles. Legends. Untold is a solid action RPG that doesn't try to reinvent the genre, but still manages to hook players for dozens of hours. It doesn't offer a truly unique experience, yet the gameplay feels polished, the combat system is enjoyable, and the atmosphere is immersive. If you enjoy Titan Quest or Diablo, this game is definitely worth checking out. It's not a masterpiece, but it's an excellent option for fans of mythological settings, especially while we all impatiently wait for Titan Quest 2. So my final score is 6 Achilleses out of 10. And if you catch it on sale, fans of the genre should absolutely pick it up.